All right, everybody, welcome to No Budget, No Problem Governance on a Shoestring. This is our monthly call of the Information Governance Community Roundtable. And this is basically an open forum, right? We have a topic, we have some thoughts about that topic, but really this is meant to be more of a conversation than us speaking at you. So we certainly encourage cameras to be on. We do encourage muting unless you're talking, but then we encourage unmuting and talking. You can also post stuff in the chat if you'd like, but ultimately this is meant to be conversation with you guys and for you guys to help us drive it. So what we're kind of talking about today, and I'm going to let our esteemed panelists introduce themselves momentarily, but what we're talking about today really is how you can move your program forward if you don't have hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars to do so. What are some things that can actually move the needle and help drive your program, at least so that you know where you're at, if nothing else, so that you can then make a meaningful budget push when it's time for your budgeting, whenever that happens to be. On this call, I am joined by, let's start with you, Steve. Steve
Oh
Weissman.
boy. I thought having millions of dollars of budget was a prerequisite to joining these calls every month. Like the doctor who specializes in diseases of the rich, you know? Um, anyway, hi. I am Steve Weissman. I am founder and CEO of Holly Group, consulting firm focused on records and information governance. Really, the goal here is to help you get the most value you can out of your information. Very often, it's a matter of being better compliant with things or with regulations and really the risk management side of things. But there's also an opportunity enhancement side to this as well, as in, gee, we have all this good information about the people we serve. Maybe we can look at it and see how we can serve them better. So I realize too that I think we've completed our first cycle in these things. And it's really thrilled that we're all still here and that you guys are here joining us. And so I just wanted to say my own thank you for that as well. Nobody has told us to please stop doing it, so I think we're going to keep doing it.
And not to mention the millions of dollars that we get in sponsors and ads and
Oh,
all
all
that
of those
revenue
things.
too.
Yes, and registration fees. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Indeed.
Flavor of love.
Ms. Young, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So Donda Young, CEO and principal consultant at, wait, yeah, I did it right this time, Helios Consulting. Um, I am based out of Portland, Maine. I have long been in this IG records management space for a long time, 20 something years. And I'd say over the last 3, 4 years, decided to go out on my own because I get to be my own boss. But the value of doing that is you get me, and I know some things, and if I don't know the things, I know who else to tap into in this, very vast network of people in this particular space. And it is about connecting for me. It's about making sure that what matters to you matters to me, and moving your needle forward at the pace that you need it. I have a motto that start small, grow big. Some call it crawl, walk, run. um, because if you don't, your foundation isn't solid for your house that you're living in, right? Your IG house. So that's where I like to start. Yeah, and so we brought this group together, and I didn't realize, Steve, that this was like our 1 year anniversary of doing this thing. That's kind of cool. I
It
love
is
that.
kind of cool.
And it just didn't dawn on me that, this month was our 1 year anniversary of getting this group together and doing these things for the community. And that's the big part that we like to stress on these calls, that, as Jesse said, it's not the talking heads talking at you. It's a group of people sharing their experiences so others can grow. So please be involved is basically what I'm trying to say.
And I'm Jesse Wilkins. I am your lovely and talented moderator for today. We rotate that between the three of us. I actually changed. I used to be an independent consultant like Steve and Donda, and I am now part of the Epic global machine, 6,000 employees worldwide. As such, I'm actually kind of an internal consultant for improving Epic's standards and practices. All right, so with no further ado, let's get right into it. One of the reasons we did a similar topic to this last year and why we're doing it again this year right now is because for many organizations, it's budget time. Certainly for mine, it is, right? I know that for the federal government, budgeting happens way earlier because the fiscal year starts on October 1st. And often in state government, it's kind of a July 1st through June 30th thing. But with that said, one of the things that we talked a lot about last year, and I would encourage you to review the recording if you haven't, is what do you do with those last little drips and drabs of money that you might have left? Maybe you've got couple $1,000 sitting around. What can you do with it? And so we're going to kind of start there. And Steve, you had put an interesting thought in. Steve or Don, one of you had put an interesting thought into the our notes for prepping for this. And so whichever one of you did that, please take up that stick. All right, go ahead, Donna.
No, it wasn't me. I'm trying
Oh,
to point at
oh,
Steve.
then it
It's
must be
going in the
Steve.
opposite
I
It
direction.
wasn't me.
I put a bunch. See, I do pay attention sometimes. I don't know which one. I actually put.
Something about not doing it all at once.
Oh, that one.
That one.
Yeah. General observation boiled down to how can I do stuff when I don't have a lot of budget? Um, general observation being, I do see a tendency for clients, even non-clients, just people I talk to who are doing this stuff, to have this feeling that I've got to do. We've got problems getting our arms around all our information, and I've got to do it, and I don't know where to start, and because I'm afraid if I start like over here, something bad's going to happen over there, or I'm getting pressure, and it's like it's okay, take a breath. You don't have to do it all at once,
Mhm.
and even if you have that mythical gazillion-dollar budget, it's probably still a good idea not to do it all at once. Because you can't. The recipe for what to do to govern information well is actually pretty clear cut, and to my mind, not really all that complicated. The cooking of that meal based on that recipe, however, is hard because every organization has a different kind of oven. It may be gas or electric, or you're in Europe versus here, and so you got to, here being the States, so you got to do the conversion on the Celsius to Fahrenheit. The details can kill you. So even though the tendency to say, I got to do it all because it's all interconnected, that may be a fair sentiment. But if you try to approach it that way, you'll self-destruct
Yeah,
because there are
you'll kind
so
of drown
many,
yourself.
yeah, there are so many details that it's worth taking a step back, trying to take the smaller bites, don't boil the ocean or eat the elephant or boil the elephant or whatever metaphor you want to use. And once you have a sense of a logical progression, not that you can't change as you go, think about each of those steps now as a micro project. So I don't have a ton of budget. I can't do it all at once, but what part can I do? Some of it you can do for free, which I know we'll get to. So even if you have no budget, you can still make some progress. But especially if you have a little budget, you can make even more progress without really throwing off any noticeable ripples. So that was
Donda,
kind
it's
of what
kind
was
of like
behind it.
start small, grow big, isn't it?
It is.
It
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Stopped and grow small and then grow big. That's kind of torture.
As you were talking, I was thinking about the analogy because I used to cook Thanksgiving dinner for everybody, 15, 20 people in my house. And so it becomes this amazing choreography of one oven, plus 4 big dishes that fill the oven that need to all come out and be hot at the same time, including a turkey, um, plus cabinet space or counter space, plus table space, plus, oh crap, we're out of milk and I need it for 4 of the dishes that are left. And so just the thinking through of the process and the planning, I think, is something that you can do relatively inexpensively, as long as you know where to look for some of those resources. And obviously, calls like this, and we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail here shortly. Um, the thing that actually caught me on your point, though, Steve, was you had typed better to do something small well than to do something
Ah,
big disappointingly,
yes.
and that really resonates with me.
Oh, she should have told me that first, then I would have talked about that.
So, Donda, in thinking through what you can do when you have a little budget, not a whole lot of money, but you got a couple bucks scattered here and there in the couch cushions. What are some of the things that you would recommend people do? And by the way, again, for everybody else, this is a conversation. So if you have some thoughts on this, I'm gonna let Donda go first, and then I'll call on whoever raises their hand or opens up their mic.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, Jesse, because it is important because you may have already done something small. And
Hmm.
we may not have thought of it, right? So sharing is caring. That's what this group is about. Um, so yeah, some of the small things you can do. One of those is I don't know where to start. So start with assessing your current environment to kind of get the lay of the land of here's all the pain points, that we're facing. And let's outline what those pain points are and where can we take a small budget, maybe it's even just a 4-digit budget, a small 4-digit budget, and put resources towards whether that's internal, external, or a small piece of software even, um, to help mitigate what that pain point is. Um, Assessments are a really great way to kind of get the lay of the land. I would say that's probably where you want to start. But if you know that, oh gosh, we don't even have a policy created for IG, guess what? Bing, number one. That's where you can start. If you aren't comfortable developing that internally, you can adopt, a consultant or, work with your legal team, for example. That's a no budget, right? That's a no budget thing if you're working internally. But if they don't even have capacity, and that's what a lot of organizations are facing is they don't have the internal people capital capacity to do some of these things. And so you have to go and use a little bit of budget externally to do some of those things. So get the lay of the land, a retention schedule. That's a foundational element. That's where I like to start is where your policies, your procedures, let's kind of look at what your landscape currently looks like.
Steve, you had
Anyone
talked.
else? Guy,
Yeah,
I
sorry, go ahead.
saw earlier that you joined the call. Any like little nuggets of things that you've done with on small budgets? Because I know you worked for a state government at one point or an entity.
County, I never had a budget, so I don't know.
There we go.
Yeah, I've had absolutely zero budget for my 15 years as a records manager, so I don't know.
What was your so how'd you do stuff? Pure dint of personality.
How did I did everything myself. I don't know. I mean there was software that it got paid for, but that wasn't, I guess I didn't consider that my budget. Enterprise software was paid for through the IT department.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Never dollars that I had to worry about or deal with.
Gotcha.
Or had access to.
Mm.
Anybody else before I throw it over to
Sarah
Steve
had
for a
her hand
question?
up, I saw.
I did. I
Yeah.
did. I actually, well, I don't have a nugget. I guess it's more of a food for thought or kind of furthering the conversation. When you have the added complication of having to go out for bid for things, how do you handle that? Because I don't have the freedom to find a consultant who I know and can just say, hey, come help me with this, because I have to do everything through the government procurement process and whatnot. So I'm interested in if anybody has any food for thought as far as, how to handle that when you have that complication added on to a very small budget as well.
Well, and I think for any large bureaucratic organization, you're going to have that same issue, right? I mean, the feds are uniquely questionable at how long it takes them to make decisions. But I mean, again, Epic 6,000 employees, we don't do anything particularly fast either. Um, I don't know that I have a solution for that. And maybe that's a topic that we can explore in some detail for a future call, Steve. Hint, hint. The whole procurement process. But I do know that most people's requirements are not as special as they think they are. And notwithstanding the fact that you have to go through the procurement process, at the end of the day, if you're looking for software that can manage records, there's not that many choices out there. If you're looking for software that does intelligent document processing, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting 150 different choices. And I know that Alan Pell Sharp, one of our colleagues, covers that sector very well. Um, there's no fast way to making the sausage in your case, I don't think,
No,
unless you can get a proof of concept. Maybe go ahead, Steve.
no, I was going to say that is certainly true. I mean, as most of us do, I see it a lot, on the other end of it, as someone who will end up getting the RFP to respond to. I think the best that I can offer up kind of links back to what Donda was talking about in terms of doing an assessment. I'm going to say that with a little a, though, assessment, because if you have an idea of what it is you want to do, and you have a procurement process to follow, you can certainly start that because you know what you need, you're going to ask for. But at the same time, do some of the low or no cost things to set yourself up so that at least if and when the procurement process comes to a successful conclusion, you're ready to jump right then and there, that you have laid some of the foundation already. So I'm going to go a little bit further left on the axis, because sometimes you say the word assessment and people are like, oh, that's a big lift, da, da, da. And it really can be, depending what you mean by it. So that's why I say lowercase a. So I think of things like let's say you're looking for a privacy consultant or something. And so you're putting together that RFP and you're working with the procurement people. But as part of that, first and foremost, do you already have a privacy policy? If you do, what does it look like? If you don't, you can start thinking about the key elements that you think that you could give to the consultant at the far end. You can think about, do we have a privacy notice that we send to people when they interact with us? If we do, what does it say? Is it good enough? If we don't, we should probably draft that. There are things that you can get going. In a similar vein, protective marking schemes. For me anyway, I hear about classification, and I think in terms of what bucket does this document type fit into. But the other side of the word classification is this a classified document? In other words, is it personal? Is it sensitive? Is it company confidential? Is it a public document? You can start thinking about that too in terms of what kind of label do you want to give these things in terms of protecting it. And furthermore, in all of the above, maybe you do have a policy, maybe you have more than one policy because each of the units that you're trying to improve each have their own. Are they standard across the organization? Do they need to be reconciled? If so, maybe that's part of what you put in the RFP for the consultant to do if you're bandwidth constrained. But all of this thinking, you start making lists. Sorry, I know I'm going on for a while, but as you can tell, I'm passionate about this part. You don't have to wait. If you've got the procurement process that you know you have to go through and you know it can take 30, 60, 90 days, do a little bit of this upfront thinking, get that boat pushed off into the stream, and then go back and flesh out what is becoming now an outline for what might be a statement of work at the far end. Maybe that was English. Some people are nodding, maybe nodding off. I don't know. But there it is, kind of all in one chunk.
Lisa,
Yeah.
I see your mic on. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I have a question, and maybe it's for both Sarah and Steve. When you talk, so Sarah, you're talking about how challenging it is for you to get maybe software support because of your procurement process. And I'm wondering, because I hear a lot about, you know, having these AI pilot projects in silo that, and they quite frankly never make it up to production because it sounds like departments are able to use them. So I guess my question was, are there any AI agents that you would be able to use to prove out what Steve was saying, to maybe actually use it initially? Like, does your organization allow that? Or, and if so, what are some of the tools that you all are using?
Yeah, no, at this point, we're completely blocked out of AI. It's federal government in general, it's starting to catch on a little bit. Most of the departments themselves are making some decisions, and so like big DOE maybe has some areas, but the actual project location that I'm at for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, we are completely blocked out of using AI tools. Of course, I have used AI tools in general for my own business purposes, for presentations and things like that for organizations and whatnot. So very generically, I could go out there and ask, a question outside of the network that has nothing to do with specifics about the organization, but that would be about the only leeway that I would that I would have at this point. And that becomes kind of a catch-22 right now, because it would be a great resource for me in developing, looking forward, how we're going to handle things once those are turned on, and so it's one of those things where it would definitely be beneficial, but right now I am locked down to basically these types of conversations with within the community, and attending the webinars that I can attend to soak up the information that I can soak up, and everything, because at this point we don't even have a timeline.
Donda, I know you had some thoughts on probably a different topic. Do you have thoughts on this, or do you want to pick up where you left off?
Well, no, I know Sarah's situation quite well, because Sarah and I, worked together on a presentation last year for AIM International. And she's in a tough spot being in the Fed, quite honestly. And I would anticipate that even some state governments are in the same space.
Right.
But if you know where the pain points are, that's part of your outline, right? And so, like Steve said, get those in your outline, start working towards that procurement process. And it might be a proof of concept or a proof of value, even, to move that needle forward, to test out a couple pieces of software, if in fact it's a piece of software that you need to help with that pain point, but it might not be. And Sarah, you and I, when we did our presentation last year, it was about repeatable process. What's already out there that's in the stratosphere of the internet that you can repurpose? That's a no cost thing that you can do. Now, maybe maybe you're not comfortable now, whether that's Sarah or anybody else on this call or anybody listening in, you're not comfortable developing a policy or developing a workflow process for e-discovery, for example. But you've done a lot of research and you like what certain things have said, and you just need somebody else to kind of put all that stuff together. That might be an option to go towards, is looking at, and sadly, Sarah, you have to do a lot of your AI searching offline and can't do it at work. But to move your needle forward, you might have to do some of that offline work to get your needle to move forward, to pull those resources together to help you make that outline. I'm of the mindset that if you can do some of that work up front and gather the intel or do some of those easy internal, I say easy, haha, internal things that can set the stage for what you want to accomplish, whether it's small and working towards the big. I would say do those things, because then you're not using budget dollars, right? You're doing some of that stuff up front, and then you get a package together, if you will, when you're pulling someone else in to say, okay, go create this thing that we want. Create our policies, create our workflows, create our procedures, develop an RFP for us to look at software. Help us through that software process even. I know, Steve, you've done that a few times. So think in terms of what you know you can accomplish yourselves to reduce the amount of budget dollars you would have to use when pulling somebody else in. But also know your limitations. If you don't have the time to do those things, to get that prep work, that staging area set, that goes on your outline. That goes in part of what you need to accomplish. And you have to be able to tell that business case, that business story to whomever it is, whether it's procurement or your leadership or whatever, the why.
So I'm going to start transitioning us towards no budget, nada, nothing at all. But there's a step in between: books. If you truly have no idea what you're doing and no idea how to get there, there's all kinds of books out there that will actually, and this is a kind of a meaty tome here. This happens to be Performing Information Governance, written by somebody at IBM. Big data guy by the looks of it. But I've got a whole shelf of them, right? And this can at least give you a starting point as to, okay, I don't have anything in place at all. What do I need? And I can't afford I'm fixing to do an assessment for a client. We're charging them $40,000 for the privilege. Obviously, that's a bigger budget than what we're contemplating here. But we're following the steps in this, not this one technically, but you could find the steps that we're going to follow in any book on how to do a business assessment. All right, so let's talk about no budget. When I go to conferences, I don't go to be the talking head or to listen to the talking heads particularly. I go for the hallway conversations. That is the single most valuable thing I get out of any conference. The stuff that happens on lunch breaks and walking between sessions and at the hotel bar and at the karaoke bar. So that's kind of my place, and I've gotten business from having those kinds of conversations. And you can get real value out of those conversations. Tell me what your status is and tell me what you think you need to do, and we can talk about it. And that's free because I'm already there and I'm having a beer and I'm not thinking too closely about my bottom line anyway. Steve, can you give us another example of something that you would do that would be absolutely no cost?
Things like this call right here.
Yeah.
And that's not a plug. I mean, you guys are here.
Kind of a plug.
But, there are lots of resources online, the AIM and ARMA communities and community related to whatever vertical you happen to be in. The thing about a hallway conversation, and I agree, I learn more from the people I'm in line with than many of the presentations I go to. And that's not a knock on the presentations, just because I've been doing this too long.
Yeah.
But there's nothing quite like the real world stories to kind of put things in perspective and to learn from. And I hear that from other attendees about each other, forget the consultant part. But for those, you still have to pay to go to the conference usually.
Okay, that's fair.
So, and if it's a local thing, it may not be a lot. If it's a chapter, maybe, $25 for lunch. But if we're really talking about zero, there's a ton of stuff online in these communities. There are plenty of people, peers, consultants, vendors.
Don't go through the whole list. We need some for Donda to talk
No,
about too.
I wasn't even reading the list, honestly. But I was going to say, it was getting me to LinkedIn. There's plenty of those on LinkedIn. There are lots of places to go. And what I would suggest also is spend time with them all. So even the book you showed, there's a million books. I've got a 5 steps to fun and profit or whatever I called it. Everybody has a take on, here, do these things. That's not really the hard part, as I referenced before. It's what's behind that. What's the thinking behind that and the context? And the more context you can get, the better. And to me, that means all of the above. If you can get somewhere and go in person and talk to the speakers and visit the event, great. But if you're really constrained, like in the COVID days, I've got the camera and the screen and my keyboard and that's it. We're better positioned today than at any other point, I think, to really learn stuff, develop that consensus across all these sources and come away with an idea of what probably is the gut of it.
Okay.
Sorry,
and-
didn't mean to steal thunder, but
Well, I'm going to toss it over to Donda, and then I think I'm actually going to toss it over to the man with no budget, if he's willing to talk about maybe some of the resources he has leveraged. But go ahead, Donda.
Yeah, I would kind of expand upon the LinkedIn mention that Steve voiced. For me, it is about your network, right? Whether you're in an association or not, and some of us on this call are part of AIM, ARMA, DAMA International, you name it. Those are invaluable resources, but the more invaluable resource within them and even outside of them are the people that you've met within, whether it's your industry vertical. And I would encourage, like Steve said, outside of those, because you never know, as I call them, knowledge nuggets. And yes, I stole that from somebody when I used to work as a practitioner. You can repurpose those knowledge nuggets. Be part of industry roundtables. I know the insurance industry has one, and it's made up of a lot of insurance, information gov, records gov people. Has one for the law firm space. One of our colleagues heads up. And that's not tied to any association. So if you have the opportunity to jump in to one of those industry vertical roundtables, and if you don't know if there is one or not, tap into somebody, you're part of a network, and say, hey, I know you work in insurance, do you, or hey, you work in gov, state, fed, etc. Is there one? I know ARMA has a good portion of them that they have in the past. I don't know if they're still doing it, but at conference, and they have those groups get together. Guess what? That's a round table, but you've just met a bunch of people sitting in that same room. Leverage it externally. So leverage your resources. Sarah, I know for a fact that you know a lot of gov people in our space, right? Call them up. What have you done? Dinessa is one of them. What are you doing? Tap into the network that you have whether it's an individual or get a couple individuals on a call and say, hey, can you help me troubleshoot? And more than likely, because we have all been there, somebody's going to be able to support, hey, I have a template. That'll get you started. Or this is our process. I can, de-identify it and shoot that over to you. Jesse's done that for me just in my own consulting world, because I've had a client that needed to go like now, like today. And like, okay, how do I fast track that for them? I tap into my network and say, hey, have you done this before? Can we glean some information together to share it? Yes, is usually the answer. So that would be my tip to you guys, is leverage your network.
This community I found too is especially commendable compared to many I've been in terms of the willingness to share.
Mhm.
And I find that really interesting. Like, a lot of companies will say, well, you can't because it's competitive advantage if we do it better than blah, blah, blah. I really, in general, love the people who do the things that we do, even as we all some days hate the things that we do. Because we are all in the same boat, and there's always something to be learned from somebody else, even if it's not directly relative. It may trigger a thought, and that thought is relevant.
Yep.
So, yeah, to your point. And Sarah behind you, hello, kitty.
I wasn't sure if that was a cat or a dog until it turned its head.
No, that's Tilt. He's the one who was in the groceries.
Oh, he's full
Ah.
now, apparently.
So, Guy, because you had mentioned earlier that you have never had a budget, never had the luxury of that, did you have any resources that you've been able to leverage for the high cost of free?
Yeah, and even if I didn't have a budget, I still spent other people's money. But
That's the way to do it if you can, I guess.
I think so. As you know, I managed to come up with some presentations and to go. If I wanted to go to conferences, what I had to do was come up with a presentation and get accepted as a speaker, and then
Right.
like the city would pay for my travel, and the conference would pay for the conference fees. And that was the only way I was able to get to any conferences, is that to present something and represent the organization somehow. So by representing the organization, yeah, I got a lot of things paid for, even if everything I said was probably horrible. Um,
I doubt that very much.
um, and I mean, I did a lot of RFPs, and or a bunch of them anyway, and got things paid for. It was just other, like with the city, um, I'd every agency in the city had offsite storages. I didn't pay for it, but whatever I chose through RFP, they paid for, right?
Right.
So there was still a budget. It just wasn't my budget.
And we alluded to this earlier, but I know that like me, you are also a past president of an ARMA chapter. I think Donda's a past president. Steve's probably been a past president of a half a dozen organizations chapters over his career. Um, but I think it was Donda that mentioned it earlier. All of these associations have chapters, and many of them are practitioners. And again, we tend to share, especially when you're in kind of a less formal setting like that, where you don't have corporate looking over, corporate legal looking over your shoulder and monitoring your conversation. Um, I want to go back to both that and LinkedIn for a second, because I have found one of the most powerful ways that I've learned stuff over my career is to find the people who seem to know what they're talking about. And sometimes, you got to be a little judicious. Sometimes people sound like they know what they're talking about, and they've never done the thing. But I am new to the law firm space. I've never worked with or for a law firm or legal department in my entire career. Part of the reason I took the job was to fill that hole. But I'm learning about how law firm records management operates and doesn't through the filter of ILTA, which is an association, and through my colleagues like Barb Dalton and Sue Gleason and Lee Zedwick and Jim Merrifield and the people I know who are practitioners or have been practitioners in this space. And I can ring up Sue and say, hey, A client just asked me a question about how they're charging to permanently remove boxes from offsite storage. I know you've negotiated that before because we've talked about it. How would you go about approaching that? And I'm not saying that I could call them all every week with another silly question, but I have a network of people, and Steve, you and Donda both alluded to this. I have a network of people that I can reach out to. And so in the law firm space, I didn't know all these people, but I see who goes to the ILTA Legal Community Roundtable calls and the ARMA Legal Roundtable calls, and who's speaking at ILTA and who's doing ILTA-y stuff and who's with the Law Firm Information Governance Symposium that Iron Mountain runs. And that helps me kind of build up this corpus of people that I think I can trust to give me the straight skinny. And I think whether you're talking about a vertical like government or healthcare, or a horizontal like HR or even records management, um, finding that group of people that you can then follow. And I'm still a guy that's on Twitter, and I follow all the SharePoint people on Twitter, all the MVPs that I can find. I follow all the records and IG people. I follow all the legal people that I know from ILTA and whatnot. And again, I have access to that network at virtually no charge. So don't overlook that. Um, Thank you, Sarah. Sarah plugged my events listing, so I'll go ahead and plug that too. I do an events listing every 2 weeks of all of the events that I can find that cover records, IG, AI, and data management. Many of those events are free, not all of them. I list the topic. I don't list the speaker, but I list the topic so you can make kind of a semi-informed choice of whether you think it's going to be worth your time or not. And that listing is free. Accessing the list is free. Getting on the list is free unless you're an evil vendor, in which case we can talk. But free resources can be really, really good. And I know we had some other ones, Steve, on the list if you wanted to talk about. There was one specifically that you said handle with care.
It's almost full circle because it has the letters A and I in them. Find the beginning of the thought here. We talked earlier a little bit about the role of AI and whether you had sanctioned to use it or not, and all of that. And without making it a whole secondary rant about the pitfalls of AI, because nobody has that kind of time. I think it's a great tool as long as you understand it's a head start.
Right.
So at the beginning of this call, we started talking in terms of you're building an outline, whether you're going to lead to an RFP, and it helps you get started to prepare for the other end of the RFP, or just to make a list of low-hanging fruit if you're not boiling elephants in the ocean. It's another metaphor. You still can't believe everything that AI tells you. It's a great head start. It's AI can be a great almost pre-research tool to cast that wide net. And some of the services that you can access, for free, you give them your email address, go make a fake Gmail if you have to, and you can do a lot of things. And some of them will even tell you the sources that they have referenced.
Right.
So you can go and check. So I say, yes, use it, but advisedly, because you still do need to say it very clearly, go and check. Draw your own conclusion. Don't just take what it tells you and say, okay, boss, here I have a list. It might be okay, but what if it isn't? What if it's pulling something from 25 years ago? The sad truth is it might still be relevant, but what if it isn't?
Right.
So, I use them all the time, and I don't use it half as much as a lot of people that I know, because I honestly forget. I'm old school enough. I want to go get my fingers dirty on the keyboard and go look things up. But that takes a long time. This at least can get me started, could point me in a direction, or might suggest some vocabulary I hadn't thought of, which is also really valuable. Or you're if you search for records management, that's what you're going to get. And you might not get anything that's relevant, but it's labeled IG, even if it's the same thing. So anyway, I'll be uncharacteristically quiet now.
Sarah.
I just want to I want to piggyback kind of just off of what Steve just said, because we did have the conversation earlier about me being blocked from AI at work, and what I have learned to do in that gap is my own research. And just because I don't have AI to make it fast, to summarize it, things like that, there are still a ton of resources out there that I can, dig into and get to the meat of, or even if I ask like a generic question to AI and find a source, then I can bring that source back and use that. So, there are definitely benefits to that, doing that research. And you're right, Steve. It takes a little bit more time. It takes a little bit more effort. And it's still relevant. It's still something that we can do. We are in the information profession, and so use those skills that we've learned to be able to do that research and find that information. And even when you're starting out and your network is small, you can branch out from there. You can branch out from resources that people give you and things like that. The Microsoft MVPs were mentioned a few minutes ago. Incredible people to follow if your company is in the Microsoft world, because you can learn so many things about what's going on, and the correlation between Microsoft and where they're going, and information governance and everything. And that's really kind of how I got my start in all of the organizations. Was I stumbled upon the webinars, and at that very early on was lucky enough to stumble upon Jesse's list, and went from there and just started going to all of those webinars and kind of built my network from there. Even when I was the SharePoint administrator, following the Microsoft MVPs, going to their webinars and using the people at those webinars to connect to other people and everything. So it really is kind of this trickle out spiderweb effect that you can use even if you don't have the budget to be a member of all of the organizations. There's a ton of them that now have webinars and virtual things that you can go to and you can attend, whether or not you're a member of the organization, whether or not you're a member of the chapter. And you just kind of, again, you kind of have to dig a little bit. When I go through Jesse's list, the first thing I do is knock out all of the ones that you have to be a member of that I'm not a member of that organization. The next thing that I do is I look at the cost and I knock out the ones that I wouldn't be able to handle on my own, and go like that. So I definitely think that there are workarounds. It's just a matter of the time and effort that you put into it.
Yeah, and I'll just add one quick tip, and I know I've provided this to a couple other colleagues. It's the rule that I have. Somebody says, hey, you should go follow this person. Well, guess what? Now go follow who they follow.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, and one I don't think we think of enough. We think about following the person, but not the people that they follow. And that's actually how I built a lot of my AI network on LinkedIn, is because they don't know who I am. They don't give me the time of day, but I know that everybody is following Lisa Jarofsky. Everybody's following Kevin Fumai. Everybody's following Oliver. I can't remember his last name now, but when I see those people referring to those people over and over and over and over again, we all know, if you're looking for a job, to follow Ryan Zilm, because he's posting jobs constantly, although they tend to be more data jobs these days. But people who want to follow the people they follow. So really, really good point, Donda. Thank you. We've got about 3.5 minutes left, so it's probably an appropriate time to start closing arguments. Steve, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I think I'll do it more in terms of summary with the addition of a vocabulary word. The summary is to go back to, remember, don't try to do it all at once, especially if you're budget constrained, because you can't, and you probably can't anyway, even if you're not budget constrained. But to that, I would add the vocabulary word discernment. That and it popped into my head when we were talking about AI a moment ago, because the one thing AI is not good at is applying discernment to what it's found. People do that. You do that. You know your context better than AI does, and better than any outside consultant does. And I say that as an outside consultant. I know how to get the stuff done. I can help you get the stuff done. But the more I know about what it's like to be you, the better job I can do and the better job we can do together. So figuring out, I'm not going to do it all at once. Which parts am I going to do? That's the discernment part. I've followed these people. I've read these things. I've attended these webinars. I have a pretty good sense of what has to happen. I asked AI. Now I got a list. Now I got to parse that list and set some priorities. Even if they change, because I'll learn things, you have to apply that discernment, because nothing else and nobody else can. Thank you. Vote for me.
Donda.
Yeah, closing arguments. If you do have a very small budget, I'll say the few things, and I mentioned policies, procedures, development, assessments, etc. But don't forget about training. It could be online, pay to play training. It could be going to a conference. It could be doing a Udemy training session. It could be even a class within your own university or college. So if your budget is really small and it's paying for one class, for example, don't forget that opportunity. Don't let the budget fall to the wayside and get pulled, because it's either use it or lose it. Use it. Use it towards training, if they'll let you do that. It may have been budgeted in somewhere else within the budgeting scheme. But if you can justify repurposing that somewhere else, then don't lose the budget. Use it for training. At minimum, use it for that space to grow your own knowledge.
All right, we're at the top of the hour. I will leave as my parting thought. I'd be willing to bet that most consultants would be willing to give you an hour of their time. They might not be willing to give it to you for free, but you could at least have kind of an exploratory discussion and start to learn what you don't know and what questions you don't know to ask, so that you can do what you can with your budget. So with thanks to my cohorts, Donda Young and Steve Weissman, and to all of you attendees and anybody who's watching this later, thank you for joining us today. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and let's do this again next month.